Hey. Welcome, everyone. Welcome. And we are here for another edition of the Reeves Reflection. And so I want to talk to you today about a situation where I was forced to face the fact that I had a talent. Now, this is going to sound corny, but when you hear the circumstances, you can appreciate it in the grander scheme of things. So let me set the stage for you so that when you're listening to this, you can kind of follow along what was happening. So back when I was stationed in the military, I was involved in the graduate chapter of my fraternity, and we had actually created an event which was called a non-Greek step show, which was basically a showcase of high school groups that had step teams. Dance, for those of you who don't know what stepping in, just think a choreographed form of dancing that utilizes your hands and your feet to make stomping and clapping noises and so forth. Anyway, I was responsible for helping start the very first one. So the very first one happened. I was the chairperson as well as the floor manager and so forth. It was a fairly successful first event. But then something funky happened. I had a conflict with a couple of individuals within my organization, and I chose to distance myself from any involvement with the organization. So the second year came around, and a different brother within the fraternity was actually tasked with running the event. However, unbeknownst to me, the event had actually gotten bigger. So the first time we did it, we had 4 teams, and they were all local teams within the Jacksonville, North Carolina area. No big deal. We had a nice little crowd of people out there, and we thought we did good. Well, I didn't know this, but the next year, instead of 4 teams, there were 10 teams. I didn't know this, but in addition to teams that were local, we had teams that drove down from Virginia and drove up from South Carolina. I didn't realize this, but the event had literally exploded overnight. Fortunately, the brother who was in charge, he's a retired colonel now and so forth, but he was great organizational skills, dynamic individual. He was juggling a couple of things because he was the MC, he was juggling the front door, and he knew he had an issue with regards to running the floor itself. So he needed somebody who was going to be responsible for actually making sure that the show went off without a hitch so he could focus his attention on the door, any emergencies, and also MC. So it was fascinating because he was the only person that was in the area that he knew could do it was, of course, the person who did it the previous year, which was me. And I had actually done it a couple times. Like at this point, when I had done it there in North Carolina, that was my 3rd time doing it. So I knew how to do it fairly confidently. But, I'd kind of gone through the motions the first couple of times, so I didn't really think too much of my skill sets in terms of doing it. But I still remember him coming to my house I was renting at the time. He came to my house. He said, "I want to talk to you." And let me just tell you, I'll be the first to tell you, I was petty. That's right. I can say it. I was petty. I wasn't trying to help out nobody. So he comes and he sits me down because, the reality is that my feelings was very hurt from the circumstances, and it didn't even involve a whole bunch of persons. It was just one person who did something really flawed, and it caused controversy within the organization. And so as opposed to everybody trying to figure out how to deal with it, I just said, I'm out. I was petty. I'm okay with petty. I'm okay with being petty, man. Sometimes you just gotta be okay. So he pulls me to the side and he's telling me, listen, this event is coming up this weekend. We need you to run the floor. And of course, I'm thinking, dude, I hope you got some good walking shoes. Pound sand, gets to stepping. I'm not doing a goddamn thing. And that's really what was going through my mind. But he was brilliant in how he broke it down to me. So what he did was, the first thing he came to me was he effectively said to me, listen, that guy was flawed in terms of what he did. And you're right. They shouldn't have came at you that way. And I was like, yeah, got my chest all out. But then what he did was he was smart. He appealed to my heartstrings. But he said, listen, we've got kids that are traveling with parents and guardians and loved ones from different states to an event that you put together. They're coming here to experience something they have never experienced before. And for some of these kids, this is the first time they traveled out of town. Do you really want them not to be able to have a memorable experience when the person who's in the best position to ensure they have that experience is choosing not to. And I stopped and I was like, oh, of course, I have a soft spot for kids. And I was like, well, of course, I'm still holding on to my pettiness. Well, he says, listen, let's keep it a buck. Nobody's asking you to come back to the organization. Nobody's telling you to do any of those things. What I'm telling you is that this is an event that is at a level that we want to take it to the next level. I can handle the door. I can handle MCs. I can handle troubleshoots. I can't do all that and handle the floor. We have guys here, but since this is such a big event, I don't want this to be their first time dealing with it. You've dealt with this before. So you don't have to do anything else. Just run the floor. Nobody will bother you. You run the floor and you tell me who you need and what you need, and I'll make it happen. And he kept saying it over and over again. You run the floor. And I kind of looked at him and he just said it to me again. He says, listen, if you want to be petty, and he called me out too. He said, if you want to be petty and trifling, that's your business. I think you're being petty, brah. And I was like, okay, call me on my pettiness. But the reality is, this is your wheelhouse. You started this here. And according to what my understanding, you did it someplace else here. You know how this is supposed to work. We want to send a message to the kids, their parents, the community, how these things should be done. And they should be given the opportunity to see it in real time. So from that point, I stopped and I took a deep breath back and I said, you know what? Okay, I'll do it. And so, of course, I get there. Now, this is fascinating. Remember now, at this point, I have no idea that the event is this big. He's just basically saying, I got a lot going on. I just need you to run it. He didn't tell me that, this thing is huge. You really need to come back. So I still remember that. So I drive up there. I'm being the guy that I am. I get there really early. The event is on a Saturday. I think the event starts at like 7. They had told all the teams to be there around 4. And so I got there probably about noon. Just me, just surveying the land, kind of taking a look, getting information. That's when I found out from him that I said, how many teams we got? And he said, we got 10 teams. We got 10. Huh. Okay. And so I asked him, how do you want this thing to flow? And he tells me exactly how he wants it to flow. He tells me the parameters, which is basically the same parameters I set up. But he said the problem that he kind of called it, he was like, yeah, I remember the one you guys did before. The part of the problem is that it bled over time. We want this thing to go like clockwork. All right. So I get there, and as fate would have it, what do you think I did? As soon as I looked up, after he and I talked, just say about 3 o'clock, after having a conversation, doing a walkthrough, I do a walkthrough. I have a layout of how I want this thing to break down. I've got a staging area for all the teams. I've got a warm-up area. I've got an area for initial prep so people can bring all their stuff to one area. I have another staging area where they can do last-minute warm-ups. I have another area where they basically do any walkthroughs, and then I have another area where they're on deck to go on this, and then the stage. And then afterwards, they can go off. And I have it all laid out. So I had to laugh. I still remember grabbing a chair because about 4 o'clock comes. I walk out to the parking lot. It is packed. I mean, you think there's 10 different teams. Each team has on average anywhere between 10 to 15 to 20 kids. So let's just say it as a whole. There was approximately about a good 200 kids out there. And so I get up. I still remember me standing on the chair. And, I didn't have a bullhorn. I didn't have a microphone. I hollered as loud as I could. And I rallied up and I told everybody to come towards me. And I introduced myself. I said, my name is Anthony Reeves. I am your stage manager. Let me get you to understand. This thing don't jump off unless I say it jumps off. So this is what you need to know going forward. I said, I'm going to give you a walk down and I'm going to give you a breakdown of how this thing goes. And I explained to them the different areas. I said, I'm going to guide you from point A to point B so that you know where you're supposed to go. Okay? And I told them, look at your watch right now. My watch says, and I think I said it's 4:30. At 6 p.m., every team needs to be in the staging area. Listen to the words that are coming out of my mouth. If all of your entire team is not there at 6 p.m., your team is disqualified. I don't want to hear no noise. I don't want to hear any excuses. You're done. So everything you need to get done right away. I told the coaches and I told the parents, hear me when I say these words. Don't come bother me about how this person had to go grab something to eat, or this person left their outfit over here, or this person is stuck in the bathroom. I don't want to hear any of that noise. At 6 o'clock, butts in seats, or you're disqualified. Choice is yours. If that's going to be a problem, leave now. I said, we have a strict timeline. I've got to make sure everything goes off on time. If you can't follow a basic instructions, then I don't need you here. Everybody be there at 6 o'clock. Is there any questions? I turned to the kids. Kids, do you have any questions? No. I said, I'm sorry, I don't hear you. No, I still don't hear you. No, sir. I said, parents, they hollered too. I said, you have until 6 o'clock. Go. The sea spread. And I was like, oh my. So I had to laugh. And so I go back inside, and I'm walking around. I'm still setting up the agent and so forth. So probably around 5:30, I look up at 5:30, and I tell them, and it was funny because when I was talking about the 6 o'clock, I did tell them, I said, I'm going to do a roll call at 6. And, you better be accountable for it. And the way we had the staging area is there was an area you couldn't sneak up. You couldn't come from behind because it was boxed in a corner. So it was funny because at 5:30, I was sitting here and I was writing notes, and I came over to the staging area, and you could see, and it was hilarious. Parents were telling their kids and coaches were telling their kids, hurry up. And finally, at like 5 minutes till, I think I was at another part, and I looked at my watch and I started walking towards the staging area. I had never seen anybody move so fast. Kids were moving at breakneck speed. And by the time I got there, I put my chair and I stood up and I said roll call, and I looked at my watch and it was counting down. I said 29, 19, 20, down, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. And as soon as I got to 4, 3, 2 kids ran in, sat down. I said roll call, and I did a roll call, and everybody was there. I was mind blown. So I won't go into the details for all the other things, but let me just tell you, this event went off without a hitch. Everybody followed the instructions. This was the most efficient I had ever done this event, and the brother who was responsible for it said that the people were so excited because of how professional the event was that it literally inspired them to want to come back to the next year. And they were telling everybody, when you go there, they are on point. He was telling me after the fact, the other reason why he wanted me to run the event was not so much because I knew how to do it, but he wanted to establish a culture. He wanted to establish a culture, and he believed that I was the best person to be able to do it. So I share that to say that I had to take a step back after the event and recognize that this was something I was good at doing. And I'll be honest, at the end of the night, I felt good. I don't know who won. I don't know who placed first, second, or third. All I know is that at the end of the night, I was able to ensure that those kids, those parents, and those coaches, when they got in the car to leave, to go back to wherever they came from, they had an experience that was memorable for them. And when you find yourself in a position where you have skills and the abilities to do certain things and so forth, remember, sometimes there are going to be people who are going to force you to face those talents and put those talents in application, not only for your benefit, but for the benefit of everyone that's around you who can take full advantage of what you have to offer and then some. All right, everyone. Again, thank you for tuning in to another edition of The Reeves Reflection. As always, you can check me out at anthonyreeves.com. And as always, I have to end the show with my favorite question of the day. Are you ready for the Anthony Reeves experience?